Here we are in Kate's garden again.
Hi Sarah, how you going?
Yeah, good.
Welcome
How are you? Thank you. Yeah, it's been a little while, and I'm glad I've got the opportunity today to come and see you again because it's been really overcast. So what are we up to today?
We've had a lot of wet weather.
Yes.
Good frog weather. Let's make a frog pond.
Fantastic. All right. Well, how do we get started? Like, what do we need?
Okay, I've got everything we need right here
Cool.
to get started with a little pond that anybody can do in their back garden.
Fantastic.
Anybody can do it in their back garden. What we're going to start with is this old baby bath. This is this beautiful old thing that's a great feature in the garden, but it's got no holes, so it holds water. This is perfect. You can use any sort of bucket, a large pot without a hole, a plastic tub. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you what you use, what you've got access to.
Absolutely.
So we're going to nestle this down in the garden. We're going to put a few water plants in.
Fantastic.
So I'll show you how to plant it.
Wonderful.
Now with this one here, it's not very deep. So we don't need a lot of depth for most frogs. Particularly here in Brisbane. There's a lot of really common frogs that like living in the garden amongst the foliage.
Okay.
Now some of the important things for frogs is that we need a clean environment, no pesticides, no herbicides. So if you're spraying, you will kill frogs.
Okay.
They're very sensitive to chemicals.
Yeah, good to know.
We need to have a vessel that holds some water. With the striped marsh frog, it is actually okay if it dries out every now and again.
Okay.
So a shallow thing like this works quite well. Some of the other frogs need permanent water, but most don't. They just need water at this time of year when it's raining and it's time to lay eggs. That's the main time they need water. In a shallow basin like this, because this is metal, in the sun it's going to heat up and the water's going to evaporate really quickly. We don't want this to get too hot, which is why I'm going to nestle it down here in the garden and have good leafy things growing in here to provide shade over the water, which will slow the evaporation, but it will also help maintain the temperature so that we're not boiling our tadpoles.
Yeah, and I just wonder as well, like, what is the reason that we like to have frogs in the garden? Like, is there a particular
Look, it's
reason?
biodiversity. They all play a role in habitat biodiversity. It is so important to have as diverse and healthy an environment as possible. Frogs are a joy.
Yes.
The different calls in the evening is beautiful, but they do eat insects, so it's lovely to have the frogs happily here eating insects for us. So that's an important role that frogs play in the garden.
Fantastic.
But really, it's just the curiosity factor is a really good one with frogs. So we're starting with any sort of container. If it has held chemicals, wash it very well first, because chemical residue in a container will kill the frogs. We can't have that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to nestle this down in here and fill that up. Okay, so we've got our basin here. We're going to just nestle it into the mulch a little bit. Now because this is quite low to the ground, the frogs will get in easily, but cane toads can also get in. So we do need to watch and check every now and again for cane toads. To stop cane toads, it's got to be at least a metre off the ground. This one obviously is not that, so we will have to keep an eye on it. Now I'm planting this out with some water plants. I've got some Louisiana iris here, which should flower beautifully. These were in an old clump that was in too much shade and hadn't flowered for a long time, so it's time to redo them. Let's start with some soil in the base. Garden soil. The worms can go back into the garden because we don't want them in the pond, they'll drown. I'm not using potting mix because potting mix has a lot of very fine, soft particles that float. So things like the bark in it, which will float and make a mess. So nice lot of worms in here to take out and rescue before we flood this. And then I can just position these. So as you can see, they've already got roots on. I just need to shake them down and position them quite happily here in the dirt. They will straighten themselves back up when they're planted. Now I also have another little water plant here. Now because this one has completely different leaves, we're actually creating an environment where we've got some tall things at the back to hide the frogs amongst, and some big leaves for tadpoles to hide under. So that different environment is really beneficial. Now what I'm doing is I'm actually adding a bit of rock minerals. This one's Garden Made. This has got no nitrogen in it, so it's very safe to use in ponds. It actually helps clean the water, but it also won't cause algae blooms. But this will give these guys a good feed without causing algae blooms. This one here, I don't even need to plant. Just press these rhizomes into the mud a little bit, and that's fine. Then all we have to do now is fill this up with water. This is a bit of rainwater. If you're using tap water, you will certainly need to let it sit for a few days before introducing any frogs to it because of the chlorine in it. But because this is tank water, it's collected rainwater, that will be fine. There's nothing toxic in this at all that the frogs won't like. Now in my garden I do have frogs around, so the frogs will find this all by themselves. I don't need to go and introduce them. If you don't have frogs in your garden, set up a pond and wait. It's best if you've got vegetation around it, so there's shelter for your pond. The frogs will come, but it's sorry about the dog chasing the bees, but you really shouldn't move frogs from one garden to another. The large green tree frogs are territorial, so they won't like being moved around. Don't move frogs from one garden to another because you can transfer frog diseases. Frogs are desperately in decline, which is one of the reasons we should be doing what we can to help them out. But pathogens, and particularly fungal pathogens, have been a big problem killing off frogs. So don't transfer frogs around. If you want to, contact the Queensland Frog Society for more information, but set up the pond and wait for the frogs to come to you. Done.
That's it.
Yeah.
Easy as that.
Yeah, it is that easy. It is that
Beautiful.
easy.
Okay, great. Well, that was a fantastic and informative session today, Kate. Thank you so much for having us.
Very welcome.
And I did have one last question. Mosquitoes. Are mosquitoes likely to breed?
That is a very
in
good
the pond?
question. Yes, they will. Most definitely. If you have a larger pond, get yourself some bladderwort, which is a carnivorous plant that lives in the water, which will eat the wrigglers. Or get some little native fish from the fish shop, not from the creeks.
Okay.
You want the little blue eyes will eat wrigglers really well. Some of the larger guppies will also eat your tadpoles, so you don't want them.
No.
So you will definitely get mozzies in there. With a shallow pond like what we've created, because that will dry out fairly quickly, and those frogs will be okay, those tadpoles will develop quickly enough that within a few weeks it's okay if that dries out and periodically inundates.
Okay.
Then you have less problem with your mozzies.
Right.
You may also get dragonflies, which is just beautiful.
Absolutely.
Let's face
Fantastic.
it, dragonfly larvae are very aggressive water predators.
Okay.
So that if you get dragonfly larvae, they will clean out any tadpoles or any wrigglers or anything. They'll even eat the fish. So that's something to watch. But don't be alarmed by that. Enjoy the dragonflies, and that this is a cycle of nature.
Yes.
Now, with mozzies, I'm sure you're familiar with this herb. This is all herb, 5-spice herb. Isn't that beautiful?
Absolutely beautiful, yeah.
Use it in place of any of the Italian herbs. It's a really good herb. Grows really well. But break a leaf and rub it on, and the mozzies won't land on you and won't bite you.
Good to know.
Very, very safe.
Yeah.
Non-toxic. Really good for keeping the mozzies away. This is the only herb, truly, that you can just rub on your skin and it will stop the mozzies landing on you and biting
Oh, definitely have to try that then.
you. So I'm going to plant these pieces at the base of our pond. So if we do have mozzies while we're here in the garden, we'll be protected. You can take that piece.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Kate, for having us today.
Anytime, Sarah.
Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.